The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of ParaX, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
All these voices. All these voices. All these things you can't explain. All these painful memories. They keep haunting you and daunting me. It's just the ghost of you and me. It's just the smoke and gasoline. It's just the ghost of you and me. Of you and me.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Staring into the Abyss. I am your host, horror author James Hershey Jr., and with me as always, my co-host, old boy James Ash. How you doing, brother?
I am doing pretty good. How is everybody tonight?
Tonight's episode is going to be a fun one. We're going to be covering a couple of articles that old boy sent me on a pretty interesting topic. The topic is going to be the Devil's Footprints. And the first article comes from thevintagenews.com. And the headline is The 1855 Devil's Footprints Mystery in Devon, England. It was published October 12, 2016, and it was written by Boban Dosevsky. Something strange happened on the cold night of February 8, 1855, around the Exe estuary in Devon, England. That winter was extremely cold. According to reports from the time, temperatures remained around freezing from January until March. The low temperatures didn't allow snow to melt, and every new snowfall just added a new layer over the terrain. These extreme weather conditions were the perfect setup for the strange events of that night. According to the few witness accounts from the time, after a heavy snowfall on the night of February 8, 1855, mysterious hoof marks appeared all over South and East Devon. The hoof marks were reported to be around 4 inches long, 3 inches across, between 8 and 16 inches apart, and mostly in a single file. Reports about these footprints come from around 30 different locations in Devon. The combined footprints had a reported length of between 40 and 100 miles. It seemed like the creature that left the traces could overcome any obstacle. Footprints were found over houses, frozen rivers, haystacks, snow-covered roofs, high walls, and also inside drain pipes. Here's a part of one news report that described the event. Quote, "It appears on Thursday night last, there was a very heavy snowfall in the neighborhood of Exeter and the south of Devon. On the following morning, the inhabitants of the above towns were surprised at discovering the footmarks of some strange and mysterious animal, endowed with the power of ubiquity, as the footprints were to be seen in all kinds of unaccountable places, on the tops of houses and narrow walls, in gardens and courtyards, enclosed by high walls and palings, as well as in open fields. The footprints appeared over a huge area, from Exmouth up to Topsham, and across the Exe estuary to Dawlish and Teaganmouth. Some reports also claimed prints appeared even further south to Totnes and Torquay, and as far away as Weymouth or Dorset and Lincolnshire. First-hand evidence of this event is rare. The first written accounts of this phenomenon appeared in 1950, after a collection of documents belonging to Reverend H.T. Ellencombe, the vicar of Clyde St. George in the 1850s, was discovered. These documents included his personal letters, some tracings of the footprints, and a letter to the Illustrated London News marked "Not for Publication." Here is a part of that letter. Quote, "The marks which appeared on the snow, which lay very thinly on the ground at the time, and which were seen on Friday morning, to all appearances were the perfect impression of a donkey's hoof, the length 4 inches by 2 3/4 inches, but instead of progressing as that animal would have done, or indeed as any other would have done, feet right and left, it appeared that the foot had followed foot in a single line, the distance from each thread being 8 inches or rather more, the footmarks in every parish being exactly the same size and the steps the same length." End quote. The footprints were soon named the Devil's Footprints, or Tracks of Satan, because of their shape and the resemblance to a cloven hoof. Some people started to really believe the devil himself made the footprints. People were scared for some time after the event and avoided venturing outside after midnight. Since this mystery was first investigated, there has been a variety of different theories about the origin of the traces in the snow. One more recent study on this subject, done by Mike Dash, a notable Welsh writer, historian, and researcher, claims that there was no single source of footprints. According to him, some of those tracks are most likely hoaxes. Most of them were probably made by quadrupeds such as donkeys and ponies, and there were also some traces made by wood mice. Still, at the end of his study, Dash admits that not all of the marks can be explained and allows for the mystery to continue. Dash's suggestion that at least some of the footprints were made by hopping rodents seems pretty solid. He noted that traces left by wood mice resembled that of an animal with cloves. This theory was also mentioned in the Illustrated London News in March of 1855. The British novelist Geoffrey Household had a different idea about the traces. He believed that an experimental balloon was mistakenly released on the Davenport dock. According to Geoffrey, the balloon had made the traces in the snow by dragging 2 shackles attached on the end of its mooring ropes. Household claimed that this was a true event about which he had heard from a man called Major Carter, whose grandfather had worked at Devonport at the time. According to Carter, this incident had been covered up because the balloon damaged a few greenhouses and windows before it finally went down somewhere close to Honiton. Another theory from July 1855 suggests that the traces were made by groups of hungry badgers, awake and searching for food that night. Badgers are quadrupeds that leave a large footprint. One other theory that has been suggested many times is that the whole fuss about the footprints was a case of mass hysteria. It was probably caused by people seeing many different animal tracks and failing to distinguish them as separate. Whatever the truth may be, this event was probably a really strange sight for those people 161 years ago, and it still captivates our imagination today. And that is the end of the first article. Now, quickly before I go to the second article, let me say the theory of the mass hysteria I think is rubbish. I can throw that one in the garbage right now. As far as it being badgers aren't going to leave tracks that are that big. So I would throw that one away as well. The interesting one to me in this is the balloon, because that could account for the single file look of it. If it was dragging 2 what they called shackles, or just chains with locks or something on them, if they were dragging those behind and they were making those prints, it would explain the uniform distance between them because it would bounce, and it would explain how it would be in a single file. So that one to me is very, very interesting. Short of that, I think maybe it was something like a roe deer. There's roe deer in that area. They leave prints that would be hoof marks that are around that size. I couldn't explain why they were in a single file, though. That doesn't make any sense to me. But those are my theories so far on this as we get done with the first article. Now we're going to look at the second one here. The second article comes from Medium.com. And the headline is "The Truth About the Devil's Footprints." So maybe they'll know exactly what's going on here. Did Satan himself visit the English county of Devon one cold night in 1855? It was published on December 3rd, 2020, and it was written by Michael East. It was on the night of February 8th, 1855. That heavy snowfall covered the southern British counties of Devon and Dorset. The inclement weather would continue for days, and upon waking, villagers and townsfolk in the mostly rural locations were horrified to find cloven hoof prints at as many as 30 sites across the region. While you might not think this unusual, with goats to be expected in the countryside, these footprints were up to 4 inches long, and the creature, whatever it was, seemingly walked on 2 legs. The devil's footprints covered a distance between 40 and 100 miles and were between 8 and 16 inches apart. And while some were described as 4 inches long, most were in fact only an inch and a half or 2 inches. So here already we have a difference in the reporting of the size of the footprints and of the distance between them. Reports of the phenomenon came from across Devon, mostly centered around the Exe estuary in the east and south of the region. However, there were reports of such satanic footprints as far away as Dorset, the next county to the east. The tracks were mostly straight, with no object seemingly phasing whatever creature was responsible, smoothly moving over haystacks, houses, and rivers. The footprints even appeared on roofs, and according to some accounts were directed towards the country house of the Lord of Exeter. At the time this was Brownlow Cecil, 4th Marquis of Exeter. The Times described the tracks as more like that of a biped than a quadruped, and the steps were generally 8 inches in advance of each other. The impressions of the feet closely resembled that of a donkey's shoe, and measured from an inch and a half to 2.5 inches across. The appearance of the prints was seemingly a one-off event, with nothing new appearing on subsequent nights. The tracks led to a feeling of unease in the local area, mainly when some opportunistic members of the clergy decided to proclaim them the work of the devil, and a warning for locals to cease their sinning. Which, right away, I can tell you that's BS as well. I mean, they might have done that. I'm sure they did that probably. If they're saying they did it, I'm sure they did it. But absolute nonsense. That's not how God works. He doesn't send demons to earth to run around in the snow as a warning to stop sinning. That's just absolute rubbish. The appearance of satanic footprints in Devon is not the only reporting of such a phenomenon, with a similar case being noted 15 years prior in Scotland. As in Devon, the tracks appeared in the snow, with the footprints recorded as covering a sizable distance. The press was clear, however, that they believed them to be from an unknown animal rather than the work of Satan. Quote, among the high mountains of that elevated district, where Glenorchy, Glenlyon, and Glen O'Shea are contiguous, there have been met with several times, during this and also the former winter upon the snow, the tracks of an animal seemingly unknown at present in Scotland. The print of the foot in every respect is an exact resemblance of that of a foal of considerable size, with this small difference perhaps that the sole seems a little longer and not so round. But as no one has had the good fortune as yet to have obtained a glimpse of this creature, nothing more can be said of its shape or dimensions. Only it has been remarked from the depth to which the feet sunk in the snow that it must be a beast of considerable size. It has also been observed that its walk is not like that of the generality of quadrupeds, but that it is more like the bounding or limping of a hare when not scared or pursued. It is not in one locality only that its tracks have been met, but through a range of at least 12 miles. The Times, March 14, 1840. There were further reports of such footprints in Munich and the Dresden Frauenkirch, both in Germany. There was one from as far away as the Kerguelen Islands in the southern Indian Ocean, yet another from Belgium in 1945 at the Château de Morvais. Another further case was noted in 1855 in Poland, and modern-day appearances of such footprints have also been reported in Devon and Scotland, likely by pranksters evoking the legends of the Devil's Footprint case. Appearing in 2009, the new Devon footprints were considerably different to those of the myth, appearing in a single back garden and appearing different to those of the legend. Scientists from the Center of Fortean Zoology inspected them. Quote, thousands of people across the world believe in the paranormal, but so far every single thing we have looked into has turned out to have a natural explanation. I'm sure these will as well. Do I believe that the devil comes from the pits of hell to wander around the gardens of North Devon? Of course not. End quote. That's a quote from Jonathan Downs from the Center for Fortean Zoology. Explanations for the original 1855 event are varied, and none entirely satisfy. The author Geoffrey Household, for example, suggests that a balloon may have been responsible. The experimental craft accidentally breaking free from its moorings at the nearby Devonport dockyard. Household contends that the mooring ropes of the balloon had shackles on the end, which impacted into the ground, the affair being hushed up by the military when it became apparent that damage had been done to the property over a massive distance. Others, however, suggest that wildlife was responsible, with the incident sparking the interest of naturalists. With the night of February 8th and into the morning of February 9th being unnaturally cold, many animals were likely to have been in search of food. Raccoons, rats, swans, and otters have all been suggested as culprits. Writing just a month after the incident, the English biologist, comparative anatomist, and paleontologist Sir Richard Owen told that badgers were responsible. Owen said that the badger is almost the only plantigrade quadruped in Britain, with its footprint being far more extensive than most people expect. An esteemed zoological friend had submitted to me a carefully executed drawing of one of the more perfect impressions left in the snow at Luscombe, South Devon, on or about the 8th of last month. It was the hind foot of a badger. Sir Richard Owen, The Lancaster Gazette, March 17, 1855. The biologist would point out that while the badger sleeps a great deal in the winter, it does not hibernate, and being nocturnal, occasionally comes out in the winter when faced with cold and hunger. He would speculate that more than one such creature was out foraging. That one and the same animal should have gone over 100 miles of a most devious and irregular route in one night. It is as improbable as that one badger only should have been awake and hungry out of the number concealed in the 100 miles of rocky and bosky Devonshire, which has been startled by the impressions revealed by the rarely spread carpet of snow in that beautiful country. Sir Richard Owen, The Lancaster Gazette, March 17, 1855. Others preferred mice, with the historian Mike Dash pointing out that the hopping rodents will make a print that resembles a cloven hoof through the positioning of the limbs when they make a jump. The theory was not new, with the Illustrated London News suggesting the same in March of 1855. The most interesting theory, however, was the claim that kangaroos might have been responsible. Writing in the same publication, the Reverend G.M. Musgrave claimed that he had received a report that kangaroos had escaped from a private zoo in the area, and must indeed have been responsible. There was no follow-up to this claim, and Musgrave would later say he'd made it up in an attempt to alleviate his parishioners' fears that the footprints had been the work of Satan. Quote, I found a very apt opportunity to mention the name of kangaroo, in allusion to the report then current. I certainly did not pin my faith to that version of the mystery, but the state of the public mind of the villagers dreading to go out after sunset, under the conviction that this was the devil's work, rendered it very desirable that a turn should be given to such a degraded and vitiated notion. And I was thankful that a kangaroo served to disperse ideas so derogatory. Reverend G.M. Musgrave, Illustrated London News, March of 1855. Now that bothers me, that part. And this guy's a reverend. He's got parishioners. He preaches at a church. And he's out there knowingly lying about a kangaroo. What kind of reverend is out there telling lies like that? That's not cool to me. Being 1855 in Devon and Dorset, the possibility exists that these tales were mere superstition and the work of fevered imaginations, a mass panic of sorts ensuing. However, sightings of the prints were not limited to rural areas, with the marks appearing in urban environments such as Exeter and Torquay. Despite this, it seems likely that the incident has no one true origin, with the majority of the prints being animal tracks and witnesses exaggerating the accurate scale of the phenomena. After all, if they stretched 100 miles, it's unlikely anyone would have been able to verify the fact before the snow melted, given the limitations of transport and varied terrain that would need traversing. Once news spread of the visitation, pranksters may have become involved, adding their own tracks and tales of the devil walking around. While the legends of devilry may have been believed by some at the local level, the claims were never taken seriously by most people. The real mystery was how the tracks had actually come to be. While mice, badgers, and even kangaroos may be one suggestion, they seem unlikely to be the sole explanation. And the mystery of the devil's footprints, therefore, remains still unsolved. And that is the end of the second article. Now, out of both of these, what I think happened here, my favorite theory out of all those is the balloon theory. And I'm going to tell you why. There is no way that any animal made those tracks. Now you might say, well, James, how the hell do you know that? You're just talking out your butt here. Well, you got to look at this as a logic problem. Okay, this is a riddle. This is a mystery that needs to be solved. So you got to look at it logically. Any animal you want to pick, doesn't matter which one, they are going to take the path of least resistance. That's why traps and snares work. You set them up in areas where there's a break in the brush where it kind of funnels the wildlife into one spot. Because they're going to take that path of least resistance. They're not going to walk through briars and brambles and thorns if they can walk through an open area. So when it funnels them into that open area, that's where you set your trap. Okay? That always happens with animals. They always take the path of least resistance. They are not going to go the harder direction. Now, with that being said, remember when they described these tracks, that they were smooth and they followed one direction. And they went over haystacks, they went over houses, they went over all kinds of stuff. They didn't go around anything. They went over all that stuff. Now, any animal is going to be walking, see a big old haystack, and they're just going to walk around it. Why the hell would they go up and over the thing when they could just walk right around it? Especially with houses. It says the tracks went straight up the house, up onto the roof and down the other side. Now, what animal is going to do that instead of running around the house? Why would they climb up the top of a house, run across the roof, and climb back down it instead of running around it? That makes absolutely no sense. So I don't believe any animal could have made these tracks. So if you eliminate animals from the mix, what are you left with? You're left with the balloon theory. Now, with the balloon, you would have a single file because that's the way the chains were set up with the shackles on them. You would have a regular pacing of the tracks because as they hit, they would bounce and come back down, and it would be relatively the same as you go. Also with that, you're going to have it follow a single path. The balloon's not going to steer around haystacks or around houses. It's going to fly right over top of them in a straight line. So it makes sense that if it's dangling something out of it that's making these tracks, that it would go over haystacks and over houses and everything like that. That completely fits and completely makes sense. Also, the range of these tracks, both articles said that they went up to 100 miles. So if that's true, definitely no animal's making that. No animal's running 100 miles. So a balloon could easily travel that distance. Because as you're flying through the air, you're going in a straight line. You're not having to follow roads and all that kind of stuff. So you can cover a lot more distance from the air than you can on the ground. So it makes complete sense that a balloon would be able to make that 100-mile journey and have a row of tracks going for 100 miles. That makes complete and total sense to me. So you got the balloon theory, which I think best describes and best explains the evidence in this case. The other theory you have is that you had the devil running around making tracks, or some kind of demonic creature running around making tracks. Now the problem I have with that is, what was the purpose? Why? Why would some devil creature be running around? Why? Why would it run for 100 miles in a straight line? not stop and hurt anybody, didn't attack anybody, didn't eat anything. There's no reports of livestock being mutilated or dogs being missing or anything. Didn't stop for a snack, didn't raise no hell, just ran in a straight line for 100 miles and disappeared, never to be seen again. That doesn't make any sense to me either. So if I had to choose what I think happened here, I would go with the balloon theory. To me, that is the only one out of all the theories that are brought up in these articles that makes even the smallest amount of sense to me. With that being said, I'm going to throw over to Old Boy and get his opinion on it and see what he thought of it. Old Boy, go ahead, brother.
Thank you, brother. So here's what I think. I'm the one that got this story, so because I thought it was interesting, because I've heard about it before in the past, and I thought it was pretty interesting. So I sent it to James, and I wanted to, we started talking about it, and we decided to do this today. Here's where it could have been a balloon theory. I kind of do. It could have been an animal, but the devil doesn't have to have a reason to do anything. It could do whatever it wants. Or a demon. I'm not going to say it was devil because everybody thinks automatically because it could have been a demon. Could have been something like the Jersey Devil. Remember, at that time, people saw something like that jump out. Maybe it was something messing with people. Maybe it could have been something like that. You don't know. No one really knows because it was such a long time ago. But the only problem is I don't think it was a hoax because it was the middle of the winter. It was in the 1800s. So I don't think somebody was going to go out there just to do that to scare people. And maybe now or 20 years ago, I will believe that. I could believe somebody doing that, but not now. Not that time. Not especially how cold it is. It would be very hard to do it that way. Honestly, I don't know what it is. What I've read about it, what I think it could be what James is talking about, a balloon. Only problem is if it's really cold, the balloon would have popped. So I don't know what it was. Might have been an animal. Why would it jump over haystacks? It would just gone and done whatever. It would have went over or whatever. When it just purposely did it. But the other interesting thing is the religious part of it. People were saying that you could go to hell, and if you don't believe in that's what it was. It's to teach you a lesson from God. It could have been. Think about it. It could have been a church wanting back then. A lot of people wanted people to fear God, and that's what they did back then. So that could be what happened. If it was somebody who actually did it, it wasn't doing it as a hoax. It was doing it as meant for purpose. So people would go to church and stop sinning. Because they did things differently back then. A lot different. It was more old school. You didn't do the stuff you did now. So that could have been a possibility too, James, if you thought about it. And, when I'm done talking, you can tell me what you think about that. But I think that's pretty extreme for somebody trying to do that. That's pretty crazy. You must have been very dedicated to go out in the middle in the cold and do that. That would be very hard to do, especially that day in the 1800s. It's a little bit different. That's why I'm trying to say like this would have been easier to do now than it would have been over 150 years ago. I just don't see that happening. I do see it could be a creature. Now, kangaroos, I don't believe it. It would be really cold. Remember, kangaroos are used to a warmer climate. That would be kind of, they do got the one report, but it was only one report. I don't believe it. I think they were trying to cover it up like they do with everything. I think maybe that it could have been some kind of weird creature, a crypto. We didn't think about that, James. It could have been a crypto, something we never even knew of. Because I said I've seen an animal that fits that where I live in California. It was huge, and it jumped over a 6.5-foot fence, and the one left hoof caught it and ran off. That's what got me all into this stuff. I seen something this one day. I never got to explain that one day, guys, getting into this. I had seen something when I was with a bunch of people. There was like 5 people, and we seen it. We were in our teens, and I saw this thing hop over with hooves. And it must have been 7, 8 feet tall, and it ran out into the desert. I don't know what it was. It's the middle of the desert. There's houses, and there's a bunch of desert. And we seen that. And it had hoof prints. So it could have been a crypto for all we know. Why is it always has to be the back then? I understand, because a lot of people didn't have TVs and movies like they do now, and of course everything then was the devil. It could have been a crypto for all we know, another kind of creature like the Jersey Devil could, or something like that. Something just decided to, I wouldn't understand why so far, but maybe that's what it is. Maybe it was just a donkey or something like you were talking to. I'm just trying to throw ideas. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments, because this is a very interesting story. That's why I wanted to do it, because we like to do interesting stuff and like to see if they're wrong and try to prove them wrong or right. I'm taking any kind of theory, really. I mean, I don't think it was a couple of them. The kangaroo, I'd throw that one right out. And I threw the one out at God sent the devil, a demon or the devil to teach you guys to believe in him. He wouldn't do that. That's not how he works. If you believe that, but I just don't believe he would waste that on doing that just to have him jump around the snow. It would have been a lot more than that, guys. It would have been more. It just would have been more than him making footprints in the snow. Maybe it was something we don't know. Maybe it was a crypto running around and it happily got in the snow. There was less people then. Maybe it was a demon playing around to teach. Maybe somebody was messing around with. We also think about it, a lot of people were messing around with black magic and stuff back in that time. Maybe it was something was summoned. Do you ever, James? That's one thing you didn't think about. And in the stories is something could have been summoned. That's why you don't see it anymore. Because maybe somebody was messing around with some kind of spell. It came and started wandering around and it lost control of it, or they just wanted to control it. So there's a lot of people who are in a lot of black magic, a lot of stuff, a lot of bad things going on out there. Shermans and people who just they're on the left and they're doing things for purpose. That could be a possibility, guys. I was just thinking about that. It just came out of my head. Somebody could have been messing around with some kind of books and, got this demon to come out of nowhere. And that's why it was hopping around. And maybe it chased after the person. They lost control of it. Or maybe that's what it did. They were messing around with a book and this thing came out and started running around. Sounds like the Krampus, if you want to think about it. I mean, I don't want to get into that. That we all know that's not probably true. Because, the Krampus... But it sounds like that because it was during winter and stuff like that. That's where kind of sounds weird like that, like the alternate Santa Claus. But maybe it was something was summoned. Maybe somebody summoned something and that's what it came out and it took off. Or maybe it's some kind of creature. Or maybe it was just animal for all we know. But the 4 inches, that's a lot. That's pretty big. This one's kind of got me stumped, Yeah, but I don't know. It might be just a hoax. I mean, somebody could have took the time to do that in the middle of the winter time. I don't know. I'm just kind of baffled from it. I enjoyed the story, but I don't know if it was the devil. I think that's just back then in the 1800s. A lot of things. That's the final conclusion was the devil, and I think that's what they automatically thought. Just like the Jersey Devil, it was a devil. It could be a mutated animal. It could be something we never even seen before. People automatically assume as soon as it's something that's not, it's either supernatural or it's the devil. So it could have been a creature, like a crypto. Could have been a regular animal. It could have been somebody running around there just playing a hoax on somebody. It could have been a ghost. How do you know it wasn't some kind of weird ghost or something? Maybe a ghost of a goat or something. I'm just throwing. I don't think it was. I'm just saying it could have been. thinking about it now, I'm kind of getting some ideas. I'm just trying to throw stuff out there to make you guys kind of a little bit chuckle when you guys listen to the show, because I like getting you guys to laugh a little bit. But that's all I can think of, James. You kind of got me a little stumped on that one. I don't know what it is. There's going to be a couple possibilities. That's just my opinion. Go ahead, brother.
I will tackle several of these as I go through this. We'll start with it being a hoax. I don't believe that there's any way that this could have been a hoax, and I'll explain why. Is it possible that somebody could have made those prints? Yes. But remember, this stretched 100 miles. Now, they had said that there was no tracks other than these tracks. So if somebody was doing this as a hoax, there would be tracks beside the tracks that they left as the hoax, because they would have had to walk up to it to start the tracks. Those tracks couldn't have been them wearing some kind of weird shoes or something, because they're only 4 inches long. And anybody that is the age of being an adult, your foot is much larger than that. And there's no hoof prints beside it, like horseshoe tracks or anything like that. Remember, 100 miles. That means they walked. If you don't see horse prints anywhere, that means they walked for 100 miles without leaving any footprints beside this line of tracks. I just don't think that's possible. So that rules out a hoax. The idea that this could have been a demon of some sort. Well, keep in mind, a demon is a disembodied spirit. So it's not leaving footprints. Unless it has possessed something, that would be the only way it would have a physical body to actually leave any kind of prints anyway. And then once again, what purpose? Just to run 100 miles and then disappear? That makes no sense. If it was something demonic, it would have been hurting somebody if it had control of a body that could make prints. So I don't think it was that. An old boy brought up the idea of a cryptid. I had considered that. But the reason I dismissed that idea was because it was never seen again. So if you have an animal or a cryptid, right, which is a biological creature that ran through towns and cities and the country, ran up on top of houses, across haystacks, for 100 miles, it ran in a straight line. First of all, that would have made a tremendous amount of noise, something like that jumping on your roof and running around. I live in the mountains. I have all kinds of animals around me. And believe me, when a squirrel jumps on my roof and runs across to stash nuts away for the winter, it sounds like a damn herd of elephant running across the roof. So I don't believe there's any way any kind of cryptid creature was jumping around on people's roofs without anybody waking up or noticing. That's the first problem. The second problem is that it was never seen or heard from again. Now, if this is a cryptid creature, this is a biological creature that is in this area, there would have been reports of it. They would have found more tracks at a later date. They would have had sightings of the creature. It was nothing. It was as if it just disappeared off the face of the earth. So I don't think that it could have been a cryptid creature that was doing this. That's why I dismiss that. Now, old boy talked about the church possibly hoaxing this. I already kind of covered the hoax angle. But what I think happened with the church was, I don't think they did this or caused this, but I think that they took advantage of it. I think when this happened and everybody was freaking out about it, they kind of played up the devil part in order to try to get people to come to church. You know, hey, it's a punishment for your sins, so you better come to church. real underhanded and a kind of a crappy thing to do. But honestly, what do you expect? I mean, this is the same church that one of the reverends was lying about it, saying it was a kangaroo, and admitted to lying about it. So if you got a reverend that's lying like that knowingly to his people, you really can't put nothing past him. He's not truly a man of God. So I think they took advantage of the situation. I don't think that they caused any of it. I think they saw an opportunity that people were already scared, and they said, hey, we can use that fear to get people in here and to get more money into the old collection plate. I think that's what that was about, and it's shameful. And I definitely don't support it. So what we're left with is the balloon theory. Now, it really depends on what kind of balloon it was. They don't really go into detail about it. He just said it was an experimental balloon. Is he talking like hot air balloon? That's what I would think of, because that would have something, the mooring hanging off of it that keeps it tied to the ground. And they pulled that up. If they had some chains hanging, they were making with shackles on them, like they said, that were making the marks. That makes sense to me. A hot air balloon could easily cover that 100-mile distance, and it would leave the marks that were supposedly left. To me, that makes sense. We had that one zoologist dude that said it was definitely a badger print, but that doesn't make any sense. Why would a badger be running for 100 miles in a straight line? That makes no sense. A badger would, even if it was the size of a badger print, why the hell would a badger run all that distance in a straight line? It makes no sense. He said that he thinks it was multiple badgers, but that makes even less sense. So you have like badgers in a 100-mile radius all decide on that same night that they're going to run out to the same little area along this straight line and not make any tracks leading up to the line, but then jump into the line and then start making tracks going straight. And what is it, like a relay race? They run so many miles and they tag the next badger who's waiting, and he runs more. I mean, it's stupid. It doesn't make any damn sense. There's no way that's the case. So once again, the only thing I'm left to fall back on of the theories available, a balloon makes sense. It's not your average thing. You don't ordinarily have that. But it also makes sense to why whoever owned that balloon wouldn't have said anything about it. Because if this thing did damage as it went through, they'd be liable for that damage. So I'm sure they were very, very happy to hear that people thought it was the devil running around. To me, that's just silly. I don't see why you would ever think that the devil is running around leaving prints in the snow for no apparent reason. It's just silly to me. It doesn't make any sense. I'm a guy that, when I deal with these things, I use logic and I use deductive reasoning, and I approach it the same way I'd approach like a cold case or something, right? Where I want to gather all the evidence available and I want to see what fits. If one of the theories doesn't fit the evidence, you got to throw that theory away. And then whatever you're left with, no matter how implausible it seems, if it fits the evidence, it could potentially be the truth. And the problem that a lot of people have is when you deal with some of these things, sometimes what you're left with is kind of unbelievable. In this case, it's really not that unbelievable. A balloon got away from its mooring and did some damage as it went and ended up crashing, and they just covered it up because they didn't want to pay the damages. To me, that's not implausible at all. That seems like a fairly good explanation for what probably happened. Now, could have there been animal tracks in places as well? Well, sure. I'm sure there's animal tracks all over the place. And you know how people are. I mean, if you say, oh, we got something going on in this area, what happens every single time? Whether it's they're on a manhunt for somebody, or there's a suspect they're looking for, or somebody's escaped jail or something like that, Whatever it is, whenever there's a manhunt for somebody or something is going on like that, and they put the word out, what always happens? You get all these idiots calling from all over the damn place, giving fake tips every single time. Now you might say, well, yeah, but that's today. This was in 1855. Okay. Do you think that the people in 1855 were very different from us? Because the sad truth of the matter is, it wasn't really that long ago, guys. I mean, my grandfather was born in the 1800s. That's like 2 people ago. That's not that long ago. And yes, that generation is different than my generation in several ways, but we're not fundamentally different. I don't think we're fundamentally different from people in the ancient Egyptian times. I think we're pretty much the same as we've always been. We have more technology now, or at least a different kind of technology now than they had. But they did things we can't do now. But I think the average person was still the same then and now. And the sad truth of it is most people are kind of crazy when it comes to stuff like this. There's a lot of dumb people out there. They do a lot of dumb things. Every time you have any kind of case going on where the police are looking for help and they can put up a tip line, every single time it's flooded. Every single time it's flooded with thousands of tips from people that don't make any damn sense. Now, a lot of people might say that you're just going to have that happen, and that's true. The old boy just sent me a picture of a demon named Beer, I guess, Beer, something like that. And that's the same picture that was actually in the
Beer. Yeah, beer.
Beer. Yeah, it's the same picture that was in the article. So this is the demon that they thought that it was. Let's see what it says here about him. It says he's a spirit that appears in the 16th century, and its derivatives where he is described as the great president of hell, having 50 legions of demons under his command. He appears when the sun is in Sagittarius. Like Charon, the chief centaur of Greek mythology, he teaches natural and moral philosophy, logic, and the virtues of all herbs and plants, and is also capable of healing all infirmities, especially of men, and bestows good familiars. He has been described as being in the shape of Sagittarius, which is a centaur with a bow and arrows. And it says that he was engraved as having, in this engraving they did of him, they depicted him as having the head of a lion and 5 goat legs surrounding his body to walk in every direction. It is definitely a weird looking thing. So that's the demon that they thought that it was, I guess. But those hoofs there are much larger than 4 inches. And according to this picture, it wouldn't leave the prints that were left on the scene, because the scene was, those prints were in a straight line, and this thing is very, very, very large.
I was going to say he's one of the 72 demons of the Gotia. I think that's how you say it. Like what is it, Bel and all them, and King Paimon. He's one of the 72 demons. Sorry, then you can go back. I just wanted to let you know. That's also who he is. Of Solomon.
What I'm saying is, if you look at its legs, the stance is way wider. There's no way that thing's walking in a single file. You see what I'm saying? It's going to leave a set of tracks side by side as they go. It's not going to be single file. It's just a very strange looking creature. Unless it's situated like a pinwheel and it just kind of rolls like Sonic the Hedgehog or something. Then maybe, I don't know, man. That thing looks way bigger than what left the tracks that we're talking about. But anyway, there you go, guys. That's the demon they think that did it. I don't think that physically there's any way that could be possible, because it is much too large. But as always, it is completely up to you to decide. And that is about all the time we have for this episode anyway, so I'm going to throw back over to Old Boy, get his final sum up and his shout outs.
Thank you guys, and I hope you guys enjoyed the show. And I wasn't trying to interrupt James. I was showing him information because I was looking what we were talking about. It was one I was trying to figure out what it could have been if it was demons. So I sent him that. So I usually don't interrupt, but I was letting him know that there was more to it. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let us know what you think. Look it up. See what you guys think. Tell us what you guys. We always like your comments. Thank you for listening to us every Sunday on ParaX Radio. And if you guys want any merchandise, check out our shop. He'll tell you where to go. Shirts, COVID masks, all kinds of cool stuff. I'm making a new shirt, and it will be revealed soon. Thank you guys every week for for following us. We love you guys. Valentine's Day this weekend, and it's weird because President's Day is the next day. So I hope you guys all enjoy with loved ones and the holiday, both technically holidays, but the one is, for married couples or couples and girlfriends and stuff like that, and boyfriends, whatever you guys got. I hope you guys have a good week. Blessed be demon hunters, monster lovers, sugar ladies. I hope you have a great night, and blessed be.
The demon that he sent me, in case you guys want to look it up for yourself, is spelled B as in boy, U-E-R. That's how you spell the name. So if y'all put that into Google, you can see a picture of this thing that he was talking about. It's kind of weird looking. I mean, I don't know. To me, it looks like it's way bigger than a 4-inch print. So I just don't see how that could be possible. But as always, like I said, it's completely up to you guys to decide. Thank you all for listening tonight. I hope that you enjoyed the show. To me, I'm still sticking with the balloon theory. To me, that makes the most sense. But let me know down in the comments section when this goes to YouTube what you guys think. What your opinion of this is. As always, you guys make up your own minds. The YouTube channel is youtube.com/James Hershey Jr. That's where all of the episodes of Staring end up. That's where all the episodes of Paranormal News are. I'm doing a new series on the Declassified Ufo Files from the CIA. I just finished a video on a declassified FBI document that claims that the government actually shot down 3 separate UFOs and had bodies recovered from each of those crashes. That's on the YouTube channel right now. It's one of the newest ones I put up. So go check that out. And I hope that you guys go there and subscribe. It's 100% free. And there's just literally hundreds and hundreds of videos there for you to check out and to enjoy. If you're into paranormal stuff, I mean, that's the place to be. The merchandise store is teespring.com/stores/staring into the abyss. As Old Boy said, he came up with a new design for a shirt, and I'm going to be getting that into production within the next day or two, so that should be up on the store soon. So keep a watch for that on the store, and we'll probably post it on our Facebooks as well once it gets done. And as always, thank you guys. We really appreciate you, and we love you. Until we speak to you again, love many, trust few, and do harm to none. God loves you, and so do we. Bye-bye.